Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Family Banking Show. We are your hosts, Derek, Rob, and John. And to you, gentlemen, and to our listeners, a happy 4th of July.
Fourth of July edition.
Oh yeah, it is hot. But what are your plans, Rob? You said you're leaving today, right?
Yep. Heading out to Spicer, Minnesota, to get some time out on Green Lake,
Nice.
and got the family getting together out there. And yeah, looks like the weather's going to be pretty good. We're gonna have one little day of potential rain. It was looking like the Fourth of July for just a little bit. I think it's now pushed into maybe hopefully like overnight Fourth of July, early Saturday. So it might be. It's been so rainy this spring. I had to actually run out. I had to run out there last Monday, 2 days ago, um, because the water on the lake was so high, people weren't able to get their boats out of their canopy. So like your boat's on pontoons on a lift, and it's got
Yeah.
a canopy above it, and then you lower the boat into the water and you back out. But if the water level's so high, you lower the boat, it hits the water, and you can't get out of the lift because you're so high up. And so
You got to move your
thinking
dock
ahead,
back
like,
or
yep, so I had to run out there and I got the pontoon off the lift, but I had to fold the seats down and like duck and drive it out with like that much room to spare. And then my guy came in, the Oscar came in and lifted them all up and lifted it up, extended the legs down like 4 feet, put it back in, so now could pull in with some headroom. Yeah, just so much rain this spring. It's crazy.
yeah, that is nuts.
What about you guys?
We're doing the typical 4th of July parade and fireworks with the kiddos, so I'm sure
Hmm.
they'll either love it or hate it, depending on the noise.
Gonna
Mm.
say, have you tested the waters there with fireworks and toddlers?
We did it last year. My wife is so smart. She remembers to bring hearing protection because
Mm.
the fire trucks in the parade, when they
Oh
run
yeah, it's
the
so loud.
sirens, oh my goodness. Right next to you, it's just like, good grief. They're so loud, so loud. So, yeah, we'll bring the hearing pro for the kids and they should be all right.
Yeah, and for us, I think it's hilarious, the tradition that my wife's family has, where the location makes sense. So there's a restaurant in downtown Hudson, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and they go there and for brunch, and then there's a parade right after. They set up, lawn chairs and stuff and see the parade. But the restaurant is called San Pedro's, like, which is like not necessarily like it's funny because it's like a Mexican restaurant that's like,
Right.
you're not getting like, hot dogs and burgers. Like
Mm.
it's technically a brunch, which if you actually do it, it makes sense. There's like, pancakes and good brunch.
Yeah.
But
But
when I
you're saying
first
it's
heard
not the
it,
most American food.
right, when I first heard it, you know, I'm thinking you celebrate America,
Yeah.
you know
It's
what?
a,
Maybe
it's
that's
it's a melting pot. It's a
right.
Yeah.
melting
It's
pot.
testament to the melting pot. It just like for some reason made me laugh when I first heard about it, and even every year I think about it. Just okay, we're going to San Pedro's, like.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
good.
Genius.
Uh,
Yeah,
well, it's
very-
always a fun time of year. It's like you hit like the peak of summer, and
yeah,
then we start looking forward to the state fair
Yeah,
after this.
yeah,
So fun times.
it is. Yeah, yeah. And a lot of home projects that we've been doing recently, so it's fun to get things off the list and hopefully moving forward. It always seems like
Hmm.
I was just talking with a family member this last week of like the things on your to-do list never seem to really go away.
Right.
Just some things or the financial goals, paying off debt or whatever. It just seems like they sometimes you just never other bills come up that you can never really get some of those things paid off like the way that you want to. So,
Hmm.
which
It's a
is a nice
fact.
little segue. Today we're going to be talking about lifestyle design and building a life that you won't want to retire from. Uh,
Yeah.
for our listeners, the word retire means to be put out of service. And so it's a way of saying that you are no longer fit to serve and to give back to your community, which is not true. I mean, obviously, retirement from what the word literally means versus what people actually do in their retirement or with their retirement is different. But John, we'll kick it off with you. What's kind of prompted this topic, idea, lifestyle design sorts of things? What are you doing? Give our listeners a little bit of a an idea of where we're going with this episode.
Sure. So, I think we talk about it often in our podcast that IBC is powerful in and of itself. It's going to result in far more wealth, far more security, far more control, far more benefits, right? And that in and of itself is special and just, something we nerd out about and we love. But what we love even more is the follow-on effects of how it can change the course of not only like a couple, a husband and wife's lives, but generationally speaking, like how it can change the course of a family's life. And so this is speaking to that. This is speaking to the follow-on effect of what creating a system of control and guarantees does for you, right? And I can give a personal testimony to it that IBC completely changed my life and completely enabled me to do things that I believe God has like gifted me with and called me
Mm,
to. Um, it maybe takes time. The timeline is different for different families and for different people. But ultimately, it can lead you to creating a life that we're talking about, creating a life that you don't want to retire from, that you're in the mix of things, you're contributing, you're creating value for the world and those around you. You're present with your family, you're present, maybe in your church and your community, and you're doing things that you're probably like very clearly called to according to your skills, experience, values, and infinite banking and creating a financial system that fuels that and enables that uh, is what we just love about what we do. Like,
Yeah.
and personally, like experiencing the benefits. I was coming from a military background. That wasn't the life for me. I was gone
mm,
80% of the time. We had a couple kids during that time. I almost missed both, deliveries of our baby. And
mm,
um, so that was difficult. And I was like, okay, that's maybe not the lifestyle. I felt called to serve, but maybe that's not the long-term play. Um, it isn't the long-term play for anyone, if you ask me. Then I
mm,
was like, okay, maybe the corporate life is what I'm, supposed to be doing. That's what everybody else is doing, right? That's what everyone told me to do. Rich dad, poor dad. I kind of grew up in the poor dad. Uh,
mhm,
and that wasn't life-giving. It was kind of draining to me. I kept looking at the cubicle walls around me and really just felt kind of isolated and not necessarily being like utilized with the capabilities that God has given me. Um, and through IBC and creating, a system of, we'll call it like security for
mhm,
having cash value available if you were to venture out and maybe start your own business like I did. Um, I was able to leave the corporate world, have, things in place via IBC that freed me to start this business and serve clients in a way that I wouldn't be able to if I was still in the corporate world and truly like taking steps towards being the most like productive and like value creating businessman, being the most present and influential father and husband, and then being very active in my church and to those around me who probably um, could use encouragement or it could be just be in community together. So right now I feel like more than ever in my life, and Lord willing, I have many years ahead where I can continue to even improve and calibrate on what I'm doing. Like I have never been in a spot more closely aligned with what I believe is God's calling in my life and in the roles and the stage that I'm in. And IBC was a huge, piece of that puzzle leading to creating this type of life that I want to do until the Lord takes me and I'm with Him. And so I think everyone, like, well, first off, not many people even see that as an option, right? Like,
mm,
oh, well, I'm going to work until I'm 65 at whatever job, pays the bills the imagination is not there the way Nelson Nash talks about it in Becoming Your Own Banker. So
Right.
um, I'll get off my soapbox and rambling, but I'm curious um, if you all have seen just like that mindset, and I think it's all a mindset thing, right? The way we think informs our actions, and so uh, having this possibility in mind that you can create a life you don't want to retire from is not, at the forefront of a lot of people that I get to talk to in their minds.
Yeah, Nelson, he says in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, don't be afraid to capitalize. And that's what we have done. That's one of the things that's a mind shift that people, often don't even kind of consider. But once you embrace that idea and you do capitalize into your system, then he says opportunities will present themselves to you. And so one of those opportunities, John, is I can take of, and so I guess where I'm going is someone could say, well, I could then also, just I could put that money into a savings account and the same thing would happen. That's true, but with a savings account, when it's gone, like it's gone, and you don't get the protection for your family to take that leap. So that's like there's all those little facets of creating your banking system with dividend paying whole life insurance that it's just that it's the guarantees and security that come built in with the process that just aren't in other processes. So you have the death benefit protection that you get. You have the ability then to utilize those cash value funds without destroying the compound growth of the asset, the life insurance policy, where if you're draining your bank account, you just destroyed all the growth. And so and then once you get your head around all these different facets and benefits of creating an infinite banking system for your family, it then kind of opens your possibilities up of,
Yeah.
oh, well, maybe I can do this thing that I've been wanting to do, that God has been leading me to do, but I just didn't feel comfortable enough or safe enough, or, I didn't have the safety net underneath me that I now have. And it enables you to take those steps to start doing a thing that you're created to do, that you love to do, that is a thing you'd never want to stop doing, that you don't retire from, as Derek's mentioned. And so, yeah, it really help. It just starts to open your eyes up to the opportunities in front of you. You have the control, you have the guarantees, you have the protection. And even just like talking like a little bit technical, and let's say it does take a while to get your startup going or your dream started and your premiums come due, you can even borrow from your policy to pay your premiums. Like you have that flexibility. You have so much flexibility and enablement there that you just don't get with other kind of processes or assets out there. So yeah, it really kind of opens your mind to enable you to do what you really want to do.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, I was reading in the book of Ecclesiastes a week or week and a half ago, and it kind of brings up an interesting point of, you know, when is enough enough, or like how do we make sure that these desires and pursuits that we're after, um, that we can be content with, because I think that the issue with lifestyle design is it seems like, okay, you've reached your first goal, is there another one after that, or are you done? Are you happy with
Mm,
where things are at, rather than, making idols out of whatever might come next. But the interesting thing is, it's always just a lot of small choices over long periods of time
mm,
can help get you to those goals. And sometimes you got to do a little bit of a rabbit trail. This week I'm doing a professional pursuit, and maybe it's something long term that I can continue doing, or maybe it's just a means to an end of a greater goal. And so it's interesting to see how IBC has been able to enable me to take on these kind of, I don't mean to call them like rabbit trails, but kind of a rabbit trail to get to the end goal further on down the road. Let me give you an example, right? Because I'm kind of talking a little too vague here. You know, I would love to, and my wife and I would love to own land someday and have a house on that land where we can raise our children. That we neither one of us see the current house that we're in as kind of our forever home. But land is really expensive right now in our area, and especially for the amount of land that we want, it's going to take a lot of capital to acquire that. And as a means to that end, I've looked at getting licensed in another field that's still kind of my background before I started in IBC, um, to help assist us in reaching that goal. But I'm using IBC right now to get that means to an end, to build townhomes in our area, to serve our community, to do something that I like, which is construction. And it's going to help us, ideally, Lord willing, we make a profit and we're able to
Hmm.
maybe use that to acquire some land or at least get a little bit closer to it. So that's kind of a lifestyle design thing, but I'm using IBC along the way and doing a little bit of rabbit trails to help get to that end goal.
Yep.
It's not always a clean cut, like one step. It might take a couple of things along the way in order to get to whatever your goal might be.
Yep. Yeah, it comes back to that point of, or not, or a point of capitalization. Don't be afraid to capitalize. It can take time. And also, if you don't put any premiums in, you're not going to build any capital so that you can then go achieve those things. But then the argument for people is, well, if I put premiums in, then I just all my money's gone. Well, not if you do it in the infinite banking style way, where you have the early cash value design. So you put your premium in, and you can have dollars to as an emergency fund or as it's not like it's not accessible. It gives
Yeah.
you that freedom to be saving and capitalizing with still the opportunity to use those dollars if needed. So it enables, it's an enabler that
Yeah.
you just don't get in other products or processes.
Yeah, John,
Yeah.
I want to pick your brain on this idea too, is not only with IBC, not only are you changing your lifestyle, but with the legacy, you're able to help the next generation kind of craft their lifestyle too. So tell me a little bit about like that legacy lifestyle design and how did that play into some of the decisions that you're making and how do you foresee that kind of benefiting your children?
I mean, I think one of the best ways to teach children, and I by no means have anything figured out when it comes to parenting or, I learn from really, really wise people and just try things and hope they stick and hope, God's grace and favor persists. But one thing that I'm convinced is the best teacher is like an example and modeling what you believe is truly important. And to me, I believe again, like living according to God's call. Like not necessarily creating, I do want to caveat this like financial independence movement that's very prevalent in America. And there's nothing wrong with like creating additional cash flow. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with building wealth. Uh, but there is something wrong, I believe that, if you're just creating a system that you can be just like completely in control and on an island and just, drink martinis or whatever, like on the beach, like that's not what I believe like the Bible tells us to do. I don't
Yeah.
personally believe that. I think we all have like gifts, callings to like again create value and serve those around us in whatever scale, we end up that God like opens doors for. Um, so leading that back to like, uh, I believe I'm currently living according to the calling that and skills and experiences that I have, and my children are going to see that throughout their entire life, even as most likely wealth builds, and even as most likely cash flow increases, and different uh, milestones are reached. Like I'm still modeling that I'm like creating value for the world. And I'm still modeling that I'm not just gonna, relax on a beach, 300 days of the year and not leverage my gifts for the good of others. And so I think that that's one of the first most important things. And then follow on is creating avenues and creating opportunities for my kids under, a controlled environment, probably like an environment with grace and some leeway, but also, accountability and like true hard work, create these opportunities for my children, rather than them having to, you know, experience the world's way of doing things in business.
Mm,
Mhm.
mm,
And so that's what I would say to the legacy piece. I think there's tons of really good advice and opinions, and there's some bad advice and opinions out there. But ultimately, I think it's just creating these opportunities, creating this value for the next generations, and you can do that and enable it and fund it through
mhm,
infinite banking in your family bank for generations. And by that point, it's really getting good. Like
mhm,
the capitalization's done. You know, my children have policies; they're going to be able to leverage it and truly create value with whatever they're passionate about. Maybe it's real estate, maybe it's art, and they, you know, just create beauty in the world, and they can do that in a way that actually like creates value and that potentially that adds, you know, more cash flow to their lives. So there's a way to, in whatever space they want to pursue, there's a way to like actually create value and actually have it, you know, still pay the bills and still, you know, provide income for them. And so again, infinite banking is like the core of that system is creating that security and base and foundation to go forth and do things with freedom. Um, and the last thing I'll say is, well, I'll hold off on that last thing.
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing that I'm hearing throughout all of this is, Nelson always taught us your wealth must reside somewhere, and
mhm,
what better place than inside of infinite banking policy, because it's going to give John access to capital to help do these things with his children. If this was in a 401(k), John wouldn't even hardly been able to start the business that he's in, much less, think 2 or 3 generations down the road, and how this decision has helped change the lifestyle of not only his life, but of successive generations. So yeah, your wealth has to reside somewhere in order to take advantage of these things, and we believe that the best place for it is with a family banking system. But go ahead, John. What's the last thing?
Yeah, so something I've been just reading and praying through is the idea of financial independence and whether or not it's truly like a wise thing to, we'll say, create passive income to exceed your lifestyle. And I don't think that's evil in and of itself. I don't think the Bible says that. I think like where you put your dependence and where you find security, like ultimately really matters, and what you love ultimately matters. And so uh, I'll go into a little tangent, like Revelation chapter 3, where, you know, there's the letters to the churches, the 7 churches at the end.
Yep.
Uh,
mhm.
they're like kind of mini, you know, assessments and judgments of what's going on in
Right.
each of these churches.
Yep.
And for one of them, it's the church in Laodicea, and they're a very
Mhm.
wealthy, kind of American type of culture and area. And it's the one that talks about being lukewarm, right? You're neither hot nor
Right.
cold, I spit you out, right?
Yep.
The thing that I never really realized is part of that is the next verse where he says, "You say, I am rich, I have prospered," and this is key. It
Mhm.
says, "And I need nothing," not realizing that you are wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. And then he continues to go on and basically say, like, you know, trust in Jesus.
Mhm.
And particularly like this, I need nothing.
Mhm.
Like none of us should ever be at that point, no matter if we have $1 billion or $10 to our name. Like
Mm,
we always need Jesus. We always need to
mhm.
depend on his provision because he controls it all anyway, and it's not ours anyway. So we're just stewards of it. And so, uh, still, though, like this financial independence model creates opportunities to continue depending on Christ for like, you know, creating more value and impacting more lives and just being used to a greater degree. So that's kind of what I've been, you know, digesting recently and just trying to understand practically what that looks like and truly like remove any sort of security or like this idea that I need nothing. Like I'm
Right.
always, regardless of how much money I have. Um, and so it's always just trying to stay grounded and always just trying to make our not make our God money,
Right.
our God, our own selves or our own control.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's a good cautionary tale, right? As Christians and trying to do the right thing, providing for our families, and not only just providing, but then making smart decisions like infinite banking that helped accelerate that freedom and from finances. And but what I was taking from what you're saying, John, is do you have to like check yourself a little? Is the end goal to basically make myself totally self-sufficient so I don't need anything? Is that the end goal? Then that's actually not where my heart should be at, right? So I think that's a great reminder.
Yeah, I mean, God has always designed us to live in community and to work with other people. And so, yeah, to try to insulate yourself, the book of Proverbs talks about how wealth can protect. And it's true, it does, it can. Um, but it also cautions us of the man who thought his wealth was going to protect him could also destroy
Mm-hmm.
him too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's such an interesting thing, and it's always in the forefront of our minds, kind of being in this personal finance space of, it's
Yeah.
I think we have skills, we want to pursue wealth, we want to build wealth, we think that's wise and good. But it's also can be very, very dangerous for people. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's always good to check ourselves against what God says and not to set our hope on material riches, but on God who gives us all that we need. So it's yeah, yeah. I'd encourage our listeners to also check out the end of First Timothy chapter 6, and for you guys as well, because it's such a good reminder
Mm.
of what we are to do in the meantime with this wealth, how we are to share it, use it
Yeah.
to do good in our communities. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Honestly, didn't expect to go on that tangent, but
Yeah. But amen.
it's
Yeah.
just an opportunity to be vulnerable and share our heart and what we believe is really important behind infinite banking and as a byproduct of IBC. So yeah, it's fun to talk through.
Well, and just I mean, to finish up a little bit on that, I was just listening to the NNI podcast, and they have practitioners on there, and I forget which one mentioned it, but he said that he'd go to Nelson Nash's his 2-day seminars, and Nelson would start at the beginning of the seminar and go, I think maybe till like the first break, and then but right before the first break, he'd always stop and say, before anyone gets up and goes to get some coffee, you know, what I'm teaching here is important, but the thing that's the most important is if you know Jesus Christ, who he is, and as your Lord and Savior. And if you don't, before you do anything else, come up here and talk to me right now. And that was in his seminars at the
Yeah.
like that's amazing. So
Yeah.
so if you've read the book, you'll notice you'll see a lot of scripture in there in becoming your own banker, and because Nelson was a follower of Jesus, and he knew where the importance truly was. And so I appreciate that. Really, I think that's what maybe draws a lot of us to Nelson and his teaching and his wisdom in the infinite banking process and becoming your own banker.
Yeah. Yeah. A good man of high character, that's for sure.
Hmm.
All right, guys. Well, our time is running short here. We got to honor each other's schedules. And to our listeners, we'd like to say thank you. And once again, a happy 4th of July. Hope that you're safe and are having fun with family and friends and celebrating the history of our great nation. And if you are interested in starting a family banking system, you can reach out to us at thefamilybankingshow@gmail.com. And one of us would love to sit down and schedule time to meet with you and or your family. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.
See you guys.